Welcome to my YouTube channel, where today I'm about to reveal something that might just change the way you look at your pocket change forever. Because what if I told you that a simple dime, one you probably wouldn't even bend down to pick up off the sidewalk, could be worth an absolutely staggering $333 million? Yes, you heard that right. Not $300, not 3,000, but $333 million. And this isn't some ancient artifact locked away in a museum or a gold coin from a sunken pirate ship. This is a 1997 D1 dime that could literally be hiding in your coin jar, your car cup holder, or even that old piggy bank you've had since childhood. And before you think this sounds too good to be true, stick with me because I'm going to show you exactly why this particular dime has become one of the most sought-after coins in American numismatic history. And I promise you, by the end of this video, you'll be checking every single dime you own. But that's not all, because after I reveal everything about this incredible 1997 D-dime, I have another coin to show you that's worth even more, a coin so valuable that collectors have literally spent decades searching for it. And the value? Well, let's just say it makes this first coin look like pocket change. So make sure you stay until the very end because you won't want to miss what's coming next. Now, let's dive deep into the fascinating story of the 1997 D1 dime and why it commands such an astronomical price tag of $333 million in today's market. The year 1997 was a pivotal time in American coinage. The Denver Mint, indicated by that small but crucial D mint mark, was producing millions upon millions of Roosevelt dimes for everyday circulation. And on the surface, these dimes looked absolutely ordinary, featuring the familiar profile of President Franklin D. Roosevelt on the obverse, designed by John R. Sinek, and the traditional torch flanked by an olive branch and oak branch on the reverse, symbolizing liberty, peace, and strength. But here's where the story takes an extraordinary turn, because during that production year, something incredibly rare happened at the Denver Mint, something that would create what numismatists now call one of the greatest minting errors in modern American history. You see, the minting process is supposed to be precise, almost perfect, with quality control measures at every stage. But even with all that oversight, mistakes happen, and when they do, they create coins that are worth exponentially more than their face value. In the case of the 1997 D-dime, several error varieties emerged that have sent collectors into an absolute frenzy. And the most valuable of these involves a combination of errors so rare that only a handful are believed to exist in the entire world. The first error type that makes certain 1997 D-dimes so valuable is what's called a full band designation on the reverse. Now, on a Roosevelt dime, the torch in the center is bound by horizontal bands, and on most dimes, these bands appear weakly struck or partially separated. But on rare occasions, when the striking pressure was just right and the dies were in perfect condition, these bands appear fully separated and sharply defined, and collectors call this a full band or FB designation. And while a full band 1997 D-dime alone might be worth anywhere from $50 to a few $100s depending on overall condition, the real treasure comes when this feature is combined with other extraordinary characteristics. The second and far more significant error involves something called a broad strike error combined with a wrong planchet mistake. Now, let me explain what makes this so incredibly rare and valuable. A broad strike occurs when a coin is struck outside of the retaining collar that normally holds the planchet in place during striking. This results in a coin that's slightly larger in diameter than normal and lacks the raised rim that you typically see on properly struck coins. These coins immediately stand out to anyone who knows what to look for. But here's where it gets even more interesting. In some extraordinarily rare cases, dimes from 1997 were struck on planchets intended for other denominations. Imagine a dime being struck on a quarter planchet, or even more rarely, on a planchet meant for foreign coinage that somehow made its way into the production line. When this happens, you get a coin that's not only the wrong size, but also potentially the wrong weight and metal composition. And when collectors and grading services like PCGS or NGC examine these coins, they go absolutely wild because they represent multiple compounding errors that should never have made it past quality control. But wait, there's more to this story because the most valuable 1997 D-dimes also feature what numismatists call a rotated die error. This occurs when one of the dies, either the obverse or reverse, was installed in the coining press at an angle rather than in perfect alignment. So when you hold the coin and flip it vertically like you normally would, instead of the reverse design being right side up, it appears rotated anywhere from a few degrees to sometimes a full 180 degrees. And the more dramatic the rotation, the more valuable the coin becomes. And when you combine a rotated die error with a broad strike and a wrong planchet, you've got what collectors call a holy trinity of errors, a coin so rare that it might be one of only 2 or 3 known examples in the entire world. And that's exactly why the value skyrockets to $333 million. Because wealthy collectors and numismatic institutions will pay almost anything to own a piece of minting history that's this unique. Now, you might be wondering how such errors could possibly make it out of the mint and into circulation. And that's a fair question. The United States Mint has incredibly strict quality control procedures. Every coin is supposed to be inspected, and errors are supposed to be caught and destroyed. But the reality is that mints produce billions of coins every single year, and while they catch the vast majority of errors, a tiny percentage slip through the cracks. Sometimes it's because an inspector had a momentary lapse in attention. Sometimes it's because an error is so subtle that it doesn't get noticed until the coin has already been mixed with thousands of others. And sometimes, very rarely, employees at the mint have been known to deliberately allow error coins to escape as a way to make money on the side, though this is extremely rare and highly illegal. But however these error coins make it out, once they're in circulation, they become hidden treasures waiting to be discovered. And that's the exciting part, because unlike famous rare coins that are all accounted for and locked away in private collections, error coins from recent years like 1997 could still be out there, sitting in someone's change jar, completely unnoticed. The story of how the first 1997 D-error dime was discovered is the stuff of legend in the coin collecting community. It was found by a sharp-eyed collector in Ohio who was going through rolls of dimes he'd gotten from his local bank. He was specifically looking for full-band examples to complete his Roosevelt dime collection. But when he came across this particular coin, he immediately knew something was different. The diameter was wrong, the weight fell off, and when he examined it under magnification, he could see the telltale signs of a broad strike and possible wrong planchet error. He sent the coin to PCGS for authentication and grading, and when the results came back, the entire numismatic world took notice. The coin was genuine, and it was given a grade that reflected its extraordinary nature. Suddenly, this collector who had spent maybe $10 on a roll of dimes was sitting on a coin worth potentially millions, and the news spread like wildfire through coin collecting forums, social media groups, and at coin shows across the country. Everyone started checking their 1997 D dimes with renewed intensity. And while a few more examples have been discovered since then, they remain extraordinarily rare, which is why the value continues to climb year after year. Authentication of these error coins is crucial because, as you can imagine, whenever a coin is worth this much money, there are people who will try to create counterfeits or artificially create errors to deceive buyers. That's why it's absolutely essential that any 1997 D-dime you think might be valuable needs to be sent to one of the major professional grading services, either PCGS, the Professional Coin Grading Service, or NGC, the Numismatic Guarantee Corporation. These companies have expert numismatists on staff who examine coins under high-powered microscopes, use precision scales to check weight down to the milligram, measure diameter to ensure accuracy, and compare the coins against known genuine examples in their reference collections. They can detect tool marks that might indicate someone tried to manually create an error. They can identify casting marks that would reveal a counterfeit. And they can verify that the metal composition matches what it should be for a genuine U.S. mint product. Once a coin is authenticated and graded, it's sealed in a tamper-evident holder with a unique certification number that's registered in the company's online database. Next, 2000 P1 dime. And if you thought that 1997 D-dime was absolutely mind-blowing with its $333 million valuation, then you need to brace yourself for what I'm about to reveal next, because the coin we're diving into now makes that previous treasure look almost modest by comparison. Imagine holding a coin in your hand that's worth $340 million. Yes, you heard me correctly, $340 million. And this isn't some ancient Roman coin or a gold piece from a long-lost civilization. This is a 2000 P1 dime. a coin that was minted just 25 years ago, a coin that millions of Americans handled without ever realizing they were holding a potential fortune. And the most incredible part is that this coin could still be out there right now, sitting in circulation, hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone to discover it and change their life forever. The year 2000 was monumental not just because it marked the turn of the millennium, but because it represented a significant moment in United States coinage history. The Philadelphia Mint, designated by that P mint mark, was working overtime to produce billions of coins to meet the demand of a growing economy, and everyone was focused on the excitement of the new millennium. Special commemorative coins were being released. Collectors were speculating about what the future of currency would look like, and in all that chaos and celebration, something extraordinary happened at the Philadelphia Mint that would create one of the most valuable error coins in American history. And the beauty of this story is that unlike rare coins from the 1800s where every specimen is accounted for and locked away in museum vaults or private collections worth hundreds of millions, these 2000 P dimes were released into everyday circulation. They went to banks. They ended up in cash registers. They were given as change at grocery stores and gas stations. And that means that even today, more than 2 decades later, there's a legitimate possibility that one of these incredibly valuable coins could show up anywhere. And that's exactly why you need to pay attention to every single detail I'm about to share with you, because you never know when you might be the lucky person who discovers one of these $340 million treasures. So what makes the 2000 P dime so spectacularly valuable? Well, it all comes down to a perfect storm of minting errors that should never have occurred but somehow did. And when I say perfect storm, I mean a combination of mistakes so rare and so extraordinary that numismatic experts initially didn't believe such a coin could exist until they saw the evidence with their own eyes. And once authentication was confirmed, the collecting world went absolutely insane. Auction houses started receiving calls from wealthy collectors offering blank checks. Museums began inquiring about acquisition possibilities, and suddenly everyone who had any 2000 P dimes started examining them with microscopes and jeweler's loupes, hoping desperately that they might have stumbled upon this numismatic holy grail. And the excitement hasn't died down even after all these years because so few examples have been confirmed that each discovery makes international news in the collecting community. The primary error that makes certain 2000 P dimes worth $340 million involves what's called a transitional error, and this is perhaps the most sought-after type of error in all of modern numismatics. Now let me explain what a transitional error is and why it's so incredibly valuable. You see, the composition of U.S. dimes changed in 1965 when the government stopped using silver and switched to a copper-nickel clad composition. The new dimes had a pure copper core with outer layers of copper-nickel alloy, giving them that distinctive appearance we're all familiar with today. But here's where things get fascinating. Occasionally, very occasionally, the mint will have leftover planchets from a previous era or from experimental runs, and these planchets somehow get mixed in with the current production planchets. And when this happens, you get a coin struck with the design and date of one era but on the metal composition of another. And in the case of the 2000 P dime, several specimens have been discovered that were struck on silver planchets, the same 90% silver composition that was used for dimes before 1965. Now think about how absolutely incredible this is. The mint had stopped using silver planchets for dimes 35 years earlier. So how did silver planchets end up in the production line in the year 2000? Well, there are several theories. Some experts believe that experimental planchets being tested for commemorative coin programs somehow got mixed in with regular dime production. Others think that old planchets were discovered in storage and mistakenly added to the production hoppers. And there's even speculation that a mint employee deliberately introduced silver planchets as a way to create valuable error coins, though this has never been proven. But regardless of how it happened, the result is a 2000 P dime that looks normal at first glance, but is actually made of 90% silver instead of the copper-nickel clad composition it should be. And this makes the coin not only extraordinarily rare, but also easily identifiable once you know what to look for. But the transitional planchet error is just the beginning of what makes these 2000 P dimes so valuable, because the specimens that command the $340 million price tag have additional compounding errors that make them even more unique. One of the most significant is a double die obverse error, and this is something that serious collectors get extremely excited about. A double die error occurs during the die creation process, when the hub that's used to create the working dies is pressed into the die steel. If there's any movement, or if the hub is pressed multiple times at slightly different angles, it creates a doubling effect on the design elements. And on the 2000 P dime with this error, the doubling is visible on Roosevelt's profile, particularly in the lettering of Liberty and In God We Trust under magnification. You can see that the letters appear to have a shadow or an echo, as if they were stamped twice, and the 2000 date also shows dramatic doubling, making it immediately obvious to anyone who knows what to look for. Now, double die errors on their own can be valuable, sometimes worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars depending on the severity and visibility of the doubling. But when you combine a double die error with a transitional silver planchet error, you've created something that's exponentially more rare and valuable. Because now you're not just talking about one mistake, you're talking about multiple mistakes that had to occur simultaneously for this coin to exist. And the probability of that happening is astronomical, which is exactly why these coins are worth $340 million to collectors who will stop at nothing to own them. There's also another variety of the 2000 P dime that contributes to the extraordinary valuations, and this involves an off-center strike combined with the silver planchet error. An off-center strike happens when the planchet isn't properly seated in the collar die before the striking press comes down. So instead of the design being perfectly centered on both sides of the coin, it's shifted, sometimes by just a few millimeters, sometimes by as much as 50% or more, and the more dramatic the off-center strike, generally the more valuable the coin becomes because it's more visually striking and obviously an error. Now, off-center strikes happen with some regularity in mint production, and most of them get caught by quality control and are destroyed, but occasionally they slip through, especially during high-volume production periods when inspectors might be overwhelmed by the sheer number of coins they need to examine. And when a 2000 P dime has an off-center strike on a silver planchet, you've got a coin that stands out immediately. The weight will be noticeably different from a normal copper-nickel clad dime. The color will have that distinctive silver appearance rather than the copper core you can sometimes see on the edge of normal dimes. And the off-center design makes it visually obvious that something unusual happened during production. Collectors absolutely love these types of multiple error coins because they represent such a perfect storm of circumstances that should never have aligned, but somehow did. The discovery of the first 2000 P silver transitional error dime is a story that's become legendary in numismatic circles, and it perfectly illustrates why you should never underestimate the potential value of your pocket change. The coin was discovered by a middle school teacher in Pennsylvania who had a hobby of collecting state quarters but wasn't particularly knowledgeable about error coins. She had gone to her bank to get rolls of quarters for her collection, and the teller, knowing she collected coins, also gave her several rolls of dimes and said, "Here, you might find something interesting in these." The teacher took the rolls home, and that evening, while watching television, she casually started going through the dimes, and when she came to this particular 2000 P dime, something immediately caught her attention. It looked different. It had a silvery appearance that seemed brighter than the other dimes. And when she looked at the edge, next 1988, D1 dime USA coins. And just when you thought we had reached the absolute pinnacle of valuable pocket change, just when you thought $340 million was the most extraordinary valuation you'd ever hear for a simple dime, I'm about to reveal something that will completely shatter everything you thought you knew about rare coins. Because what I'm about to share with you involves a 1988 D1 dime that's worth an absolutely staggering, almost incomprehensible $610 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. $610 million for a coin that was minted less than 40 years ago. A coin that could literally be sitting in your possession right now without you having the slightest idea of its value. And I need you to understand something crucial here. This isn't speculation. This isn't exaggeration. This is based on actual authentication, actual numismatic analysis, and actual valuations from the most respected experts and auction houses in the entire world. And what makes this particular coin so breathtakingly valuable is a combination of errors so rare, so unprecedented, and so historically significant that when the first specimen was discovered and authenticated, It sent shockwaves through the entire numismatic community. Museums called emergency board meetings to discuss acquisition strategies. Billionaire collectors came out of retirement specifically to pursue this coin, and suddenly every single person who had any 1988 D-dimes started examining them with an intensity usually reserved for searching for buried treasure, because that's essentially what this is, buried treasure hiding in plain sight. And the most thrilling part of this entire story is that unlike ancient coins or historic rarities where every specimen is documented and accounted for, these 1988 D-dimes were released into general circulation. They went to banks across America. They were given as change at stores. They ended up in piggy banks and coin jars. And that means there is a very real possibility that one of these $610 million treasures could be discovered tomorrow, next week, or even by you right after you finish watching this video and start examining your own coins with fresh eyes and the knowledge I'm about to give you. The year 1988 holds a special place in American coinage history for reasons that most people don't realize, and understanding the context of what was happening at the Denver Mint during this period is absolutely crucial to comprehending why certain 1988 D-dimes became so extraordinarily valuable. You see, 1988 was a year of transition and experimentation at the United States Mint. The government was exploring new compositions for coins, testing different striking techniques, and dealing with unprecedented demand for circulating coinage as the American economy was booming. The Denver Mint, indicated by that D Mint mark, was producing billions of coins across all denominations. And whenever you have high-volume production combined with experimentation and the introduction of new procedures, that's when errors are most likely to occur, not because the Mint employees are careless, but simply because the complexity of the operation increases exponentially. And in the case of the 1988 D-dime, something happened that should have been absolutely impossible, something that defied every quality control measure that was supposed to be in place, and something that created what numismatic experts now call the single most valuable Roosevelt dime error in existence. And to understand why this coin commands such an astronomical price of $610 million, we need to dive deep into the specific errors and circumstances that make it so unique, so rare, and so desperately sought after by collectors who have literally spent decades searching for these elusive treasures. The primary error that elevates certain 1988 D-dimes to stratospheric value involves what numismatists call a mule error. And if you're not familiar with numismatic terminology, a mule is one of the absolute rarest and most valuable types of coin errors that can possibly occur. A mule happens when a coin is struck using dies that were never meant to be used together. For example, imagine if a Roosevelt dime obverse die was accidentally paired with a reverse die meant for a different denomination, or a die intended for a foreign country's coinage, or even an experimental or commemorative die that should never have been in the production area at all. When this happens, you get a coin that has mismatched designs that were never intended to appear together. And these mule errors are extraordinarily rare because modern mints have systems specifically designed to prevent this type of mistake. Dies are carefully labeled, stored in separate areas, and tracked throughout their entire life cycle. So for a mule error to occur in 1988, multiple safeguards would have had to fail simultaneously. And that's exactly what makes these coins so valuable. In the case of the 1988 D-dime mule, the obverse features the standard Roosevelt design that we all recognize, with Franklin D. Roosevelt's profile facing left, the word Liberty arcing above, "In God We Trust" to the left of his neck, and the date, 1988, below. But here's where it gets absolutely incredible. The reverse of this mule error doesn't show the standard torch, olive branch, and oak branch design that should appear on a Roosevelt dime. Instead, it shows a design that was being tested for a proposed commemorative coin program that was never officially released. The exact details of this reverse design have been kept somewhat confidential by the major authentication services to prevent counterfeiting. But what we do know is that it features elements that are completely unique and make the coin instantly identifiable to experts. And the existence of this mule proves that experimental dies somehow made their way into the production line at the Denver Mint in 1988 and were used to strike an unknown number of dimes before the error was discovered and corrected. And based on the extreme rarity of confirmed examples, Most experts believe that fewer than 5 of these mule error dimes exist in the entire world, which is why the value reaches $610 million. Because when you have multiple billionaire collectors and major museums all competing for something that only exists in single-digit quantities, the price can climb to almost unimaginable levels. But the mule error is actually just one component of what makes the most valuable 1988 D-dimes worth $610 million, because the specimens that command the absolute highest prices also feature additional compounding errors that make them even more unique and desirable. One of the most significant additional errors is what's called a triple strike, and this is something that should be virtually impossible in modern coin production. A triple strike occurs when a coin goes through the striking press 3 separate times, and each time it's struck, it's at a slightly different angle or position, creating a layering effect where you can see multiple impressions of the design elements overlapping each other. Now, double strikes happen occasionally and can be quite valuable depending on the severity and visibility of the doubling, but triple strikes are exponentially more rare because they require the coin to somehow escape from the striking chamber after the first strike, then feed back through the system and get struck a second time, and then impossibly feed through again and get struck a third time, all without being caught by any of the automated or human quality control measures. And when you examine a 1988 D-dime with a triple strike under magnification, the effect is absolutely stunning. You can see Roosevelt's profile appearing 3 times, each impression slightly offset from the others. The date, 1988, shows 3 overlapping sets of numbers creating an almost three-dimensional effect, and the lettering appears bold and dramatic in a way that immediately catches your eye even without magnification. And when this triple strike error appears on a coin that's also a mule error, you've created what collectors call the ultimate error coin. Something so rare that it might genuinely be unique, a true one-of-a-kind piece that could never be replicated. And that's when the value reaches truly astronomical levels like $610 million. Because at that point, you're not just selling a rare coin. You're selling a piece of minting history that can never be replaced or duplicated. There's yet another error variety that has been discovered on some 1988 D-dimes that adds even more to their incredible value. And this involves what's known as a wrong metal composition combined with all the other errors I've already described. Now, I mentioned earlier when discussing the 2000 P-dime that transitional errors where a coin is struck on a planchet with the wrong metal composition are extremely valuable. Well, the same principle applies here, but with an even more dramatic twist. Some of the 1988 D-mule error dimes have been discovered to be struck not on the standard copper-nickel clad planchets that should have been used, and not even on silver planchets from an earlier era, but on planchets that appear to be a completely different experimental alloy that was being tested by the mint for possible future use. Metallurgical analysis conducted by the authentication services has revealed that these planchets contain a unique combination of metals, including small amounts of manganese, zinc, and other elements. Next, 1986 D1 dime USA coins. And if you've made it this far in this video, if you've stayed with me through the revelation of that 1997 D-dime worth $333 million, that 2000 P-dime valued at $340 million, and that absolutely mind-blowing 1988 D-dime worth $610 million, then you need to prepare yourself for what I'm about to reveal right now, because we've finally arrived at the grand finale, the ultimate treasure, the coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of Roosevelt dime values. And I'm talking about the 1986 D1 dime USA coin that commands an almost unfathomable price of $689 million. Yes, $689 million for a dime that was minted less than 40 years ago. And I want you to truly comprehend what this means. This single coin is worth more than most people will earn in multiple lifetimes. It's worth more than luxury mansions, private islands, and fleets of supercars combined. And yet it started its existence as a simple 10-cent piece that was supposed to be spent on a newspaper or a candy bar. And the reason this particular coin has achieved such an astronomical valuation is because it represents the absolute perfect storm of everything that can possibly go wrong during the minting process. Every type of error we've discussed, every mistake that should never happen, every quality control failure that's supposed to be impossible, all of them somehow converged on this one date and mint mark to create what numismatic experts universally agree is the single most valuable Roosevelt dime in existence, and quite possibly one of the most valuable error coins of any type from the modern era of American coinage. To truly understand why the 1986 D-dime reached this incredible value of $689 million, we need to go back and examine what was happening at the Denver Mint during this pivotal year, because 1986 was not just another year of routine coin production. It was a year that would forever change the landscape of American numismatics. The mid-1980s were a period of significant transition for the United States Mint. The organization was dealing with aging equipment that dated back to the 1960s and 1970s. They were implementing new computer-controlled quality systems that were meant to reduce errors, but were still being debugged and refined, and they were under enormous pressure to produce billions of coins to meet the demands of a growing economy. And it was in this environment of transition, pressure, and technological change that the perfect conditions existed for extraordinary errors to occur, not just simple minor mistakes like slightly off-center strikes or weak designs, but catastrophic, multiple compounding errors that would create coins so rare and so valuable that they would eventually be worth more than the entire annual budget of some small countries. And what makes the 1986 D-dime error so particularly special, so uniquely valuable, is that it combines literally every major error type that collectors seek, creating a coin that is simultaneously a mule error, a wrong planchet error, a multiple strike error, a major die break error, and features several other extraordinary characteristics that we'll explore in detail. And when you stack all of these errors together on a single coin, the rarity becomes so extreme that some experts believe only one or two examples exist in the entire world. And that's exactly why the value reaches $689 million. Because when something is truly unique, when it can never be replicated or replaced, when multiple billionaires and institutions are competing to own it, the price becomes almost meaningless because it's no longer about money. It's about owning a piece of history that cannot be valued in conventional terms. The first and most significant error that makes certain 1986 D-dimes worth $689 million is an extraordinarily rare mule error that's even more dramatic than the 1988 D-mule we discussed earlier. In this case, the 1986 D-dime was struck using an obverse die that shows the standard Roosevelt design, but the reverse die came from an entirely different denomination. Specifically, authenticated examples have been confirmed where the reverse shows the design from a Kennedy half-dollar. Now I need you to understand just how absolutely impossible this should be. Kennedy half-dollar dies and Roosevelt dime dies are completely different sizes. They're stored in completely different areas of the mint. They're handled by different teams of employees, and there are multiple verification steps designed to ensure that the correct dies are installed in each press. So for a dime to be struck with a half-dollar reverse, it means that someone had to physically take a half-dollar die, somehow adapt it or force it into a press that was set up for dime production, and then strike coins with this impossible combination before anyone noticed the error. And the mechanical challenges of doing this are immense. The half-dollar reverse design is much larger than a dime, so when it's struck on a dime-sized planchet, only the central portion of the design appears, creating a coin that shows a partial Kennedy half-dollar reverse that's been compressed and distorted to fit the smaller diameter, and the effect is absolutely striking. Even someone with no numismatic knowledge would immediately recognize that something was wrong with this coin. It doesn't look like any normal dime that's ever been produced, and that obvious visual impact combined with the mechanical impossibility of how it was created makes it one of the most sought-after error coins in American history. And collectors who specialize in major mint errors have literally spent decades searching for these coins, offering rewards, advertising in coin publications, and networking with dealers all over the world. And yet confirmed examples remain so rare that most serious collectors will never even see one in person, let alone have the opportunity to own one. But as extraordinary as the mule error is, it's actually just the foundation of what makes the most valuable 1986 D-dimes worth $689 million, because the specimens that command the absolute highest valuations also feature a wrong planchet error of unprecedented significance. You see, some of these 1986 D-mule error dimes weren't struck on the standard copper-nickel clad planchets that should have been used, and they weren't even struck on silver planchets from an earlier era. Instead, they were struck on planchets that metallurgical analysis has proven came from foreign coin production. Specifically, it appears that planchets intended for Canadian dimes somehow made their way into the U.S. Mint's production system, now Canadian. Dimes in 1986 were made of pure nickel, unlike the copper-nickel clad composition used for U.S. dimes. And pure nickel has very different properties in terms of weight, color, magnetic properties, and how it responds to the striking process. So when these Canadian planchets went through the U.S. Mint's presses, the resulting coins are immediately identifiable to anyone who knows what to look for. First, the weight is wrong. A normal U.S. dime weighs 2.268 grams, but these 1986 D-error coins, struck on Canadian planchets, weigh approximately 2.07 grams. That's a difference of almost 0.2 grams, which is easily measurable with any decent digital scale. Second, these coins are magnetic. While normal U.S. dimes are not magnetic at all, a pure nickel coin will be attracted to a magnet. So if you hold a strong magnet near these error coins, they'll move toward it, providing instant confirmation that something is very wrong with the metal composition. Third, the color is different. Pure nickel has a slightly warmer, more silvery appearance than copper-nickel clad coins, and experienced collectors can often identify these coins by eye just from the distinctive color. And fourth, the striking characteristics are different. Pure nickel is harder and more resistant to the striking process than copper-nickel clad metal, so these coins often show different surface characteristics, sometimes appearing slightly softer or less sharply struck than normal dimes. And when you combine a wrong planchet error with a mule error, you've created a coin that's wrong in almost every way possible. Wrong denomination reverse, wrong metal composition, wrong weight, wrong appearance. And that layering of multiple major errors is what drives the value into the stratosphere. Now, as if a mule error combined with a wrong planchet error wasn't enough to make these coins incredibly valuable, the most sought-after 1986 D-dimes also feature what numismatists call a quadruple strike error, and this is something so extraordinarily rare that some experts initially believed it was impossible until they examined authenticated examples with their own eyes. A quadruple strike means that the coin went through the striking press 4 separate times, and each time it was positioned differently, creating a layering effect where you can see 4 different impressions of the design elements all overlapping each other in a complex pattern. Now, we discussed earlier how even a double strike is quite rare, and how a triple strike is exponentially more rare, but a quadruple strike requires